Welcome to the Winning in Business podcast. I'm your host, Kelli Risse, and I love talking to business professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs who are winning in business. Are you ready to reach your next level of success? If so, join us on the Winning in Business podcast as I interview entrepreneurs, business professionals, and leaders who share how they've risen to success. Before we begin, go ahead, hit subscribe and the notification button so you'll be notified each time a new episode is released. Plug in and settle in. You're about to be inspired to rise up to your next level of success. Welcome to another episode of Winning in Business. This is Kelli Risse, your host, and today I'm doing another solo episode. I'm actually really excited to be talking about imposter syndrome. So earlier this week, I was speaking to a women's group, and they asked me to speak on imposter syndrome, and I thought, this would be a great episode for the podcast. So let's talk about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a condition of feeling anxious and not feeling success internally, even if you are high performing in many external and objective ways. So the condition results in people feeling like a fake, fraud, phony, and really doubting their abilities. And, it's important for us to understand imposter syndrome because it can prevent us from doing our best work. It can prevent us from taking risks. Right? If we feel like a fraud, if we feel like a phony, then we're like, maybe I don't want to take the next risk and stretch myself in doing something, which as, business owners, as high-level professionals, we definitely want to be taking risks in our business and our career. And the interesting thing about imposter syndrome is that it affects high-achieving people. So it's not that if you have imposter syndrome, you're not high achieving. In fact, you are high achieving. And, the other important thing to look at is that the imposter syndrome, if you don't recognize it, if you don't understand it, it can block you feeling fulfilled and even happy because of the doubts, the anxiousness that's running through your mind. So let's look at the common signs of imposter syndrome. Doubting your competence and your skills, negative self-talk, getting upset when you don't meet a challenge, overachieving or over-preparing, sabotaging your own hard work and success, depending on external validation, and attributing your success to something other than your success. So I know for me personally, there are times that, I have probably fallen into all of those categories of at one time or another of what is happening in me, like who am I being, right? Am I being the over prepared person? So it's really interesting to just recognize them and know that these are signs. And what I love is when doing my research about this, Dr. Valerie Young, she is an expert on imposter syndrome, and she co-founded the Imposter Syndrome Institute. And she says that imposter syndrome can be broken down into 5 basic types. And, based on the signs that I just read above, you're going to hear these signs and recognize them as I read the 5 different imposter types. So 1, the perfectionist. And so the perfectionist believes that you must be absolutely perfect. And if you weren't perfect, you could have done better. And you feel like an imposter because your perfectionistic traits make you feel like you're not as good as others might think you are. I know as a recovering perfectionist, which I work on every day, that one can ring true to me. The expert, this is another imposter type. The expert feels like an imposter because they don't know everything there is to know about a particular subject. And so they haven't mastered all of it. So then they feel like they haven't really reached the rank of expert because there's so much more to learn. And if that is you, always remember to take a step back and go,
Yes, but of this topic, how much more of this do I know than a lot of other people because of the work that I've done and the research that I've done? Three, the natural genius. So in this imposter syndrome type, you might feel like a fraud because you don't believe you're naturally intelligent. And so if you don't get something right the first time, because things are always very easy for you, if you don't get it right the first time, or if it takes you longer to master the skill, that's when you feel like an imposter. Then there's the soloist. It's also possible to feel like an imposter if you had to ask for help to reach a certain level or status. And so the soloist, they believe since they couldn't get there by themselves and they needed help, that then they start questioning their competence and their abilities. And that's when they fall into imposter syndrome. And then the last one is the super person. Here you are with your cape on. This type of imposter syndrome involves believing that you must be the hardest worker in order to reach the highest level of achievement possible. And if you don't, you are a fraud. So you must be the hardest worker and you must reach the highest level of achievement possible. Both of those, or you're a fraud. So, did you recognize yourself in any of those when you think about yourself on a daily basis? And maybe it's not a daily basis. Maybe it's when you're pushed into doing something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone. That's where the imposter syndrome comes in. So, I know for me, just the other day, I was a guest on a podcast, and all of a sudden, right before it started, I had this like, oh my gosh, okay, I hope I'm good enough for this and to know what I'm going to say. Because on podcasts, right, you don't always know what the host is going to ask, what questions. And so I felt like this kind of wave come over me. And then here's what I did. Here's ways to overcome imposter syndrome. So five steps. One, label and identify it. Bring awareness to it. So I sat there and I went, well, this is imposter syndrome. And here we go. So I labeled it because anytime y'all, anytime you become aware of something and you put a label to it, it's like automatically you can make it better because you're like, okay, I'm aware. Second, challenge your inner critic with proof. Because you have so much proof that you are an expert, that you are great at things, that you are perhaps the top person in your field. You have collected research about that. You have testimonies. You have people that tell you that. However you collect it. So for me as a speaker, whenever I do a speaking engagement, at the end I have a QR code, and everybody takes a little survey and gives me feedback. And so far, out of all of the talks that I've done, my feedback is typically, my rating is 99% to 100% positive. People loved it. And so that's proof for me. And so I recommend creating a proof file. You can do it on your phone. You can do it in a manila folder. You can create a file however you want, but you are basically collecting your data that says you are knowledgeable, you are great at what you do, based on testimonies, based on maybe it's certifications that you've received, but maybe it's the amount of clients, customers that you've had, your reviews that you get. Keep it in a file, and that is your proof file, so that you can go back to it at any time, that when imposter syndrome really kicks up, you can look at it and remind yourself of it. This is just one of the easiest, greatest things. And so for me, if I ever start doubting my speaking abilities, I can go to my the program that I use, and I can look at it and I can go, oh, there's my proof. Like, that is the proof that people like me. And so I just think it's the greatest thing. The third thing, I absolutely love this, being a former, I was a music theater major, so being a former actress. Number 3, ask yourself, am I that great of an actor or actress to really be fooling everyone? Probably not. If you're not in Hollywood, then you may not be the greatest actress to be fooling everyone around you. Therefore, everyone knows that you are the person you are, the expert that you are. So I just love that one. Ask yourself, how great of an actress am I and who am I fooling? Then number 4, ask your mentors or a coach. Talk to them about this. Someone that you trust. Talk to them about how you're feeling. Ask them, what have they done to overcome it as well? Because again, high achieving people. So most leaders have experienced this. Now, I will tell you that women typically talk about it more than men, but men do experience it also. They just don't typically talk about it. 70% of people have experienced imposter syndrome. So that's a lot of people. And then number 5, celebrate your successes. I want you to start a celebration ritual. Did any of you out there watch Suits? If you watch Suits, you know that Harvey and Donna, now they had a pre-trial ritual, and well, it involved a can opener. What kind of ritual can you do to celebrate your successes? Because, we are like, if you are the perfectionist, then you are always, as soon as you get done, you're like, oh, this could have been better. This could have been better. I could have done this, instead of celebrating the successes. Make it a habit to celebrate the success first, then go back and evaluate yourself. Have you ever heard of sandwich feedback, where it's the positive, then the, like, here's some things that can improve, get better, and then you end with a positive? This is how you give someone feedback. It's called sandwich feedback. We need to be doing that to ourselves, because so often we jump right to that negative, critical, analyzing more what we did wrong, what we could have done better, instead of starting with the positive. So whatever ritual you're creating, and maybe it's going to involve a can opener, I don't know, but start creating some kind of a ritual to celebrate your successes. And then also start doing the positive feedback for yourself. And this can be so powerful for all of us. And I am going to really start doing the sandwich feedback for myself. I do that for other people, and now it's time to start doing it for myself. So that's my big takeaway for today. I do feel like I celebrate my successes, and so I regularly look at that, but I don't always start with the positive. So there you go. So the 5 things: label it and identify it and label it. Number 2, check your inner critic with proof. So challenge it with proof. Get out your proof. When I was a teacher, we actually had these little buckets, and we would find anytime anybody gave us a note, a parent wrote us a note, a student wrote us a note, the principal, we'd stick them in there, and that was like our bucket. And then you would fill your bucket, and then anytime you felt depleted, you get one and read one. Same thing. You're creating a file. Somebody said the other day they call it their smile file. I love it. Do that. 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, how great of an actress are you? Number 4, talk to a mentor or a coach. And then number 5, celebrate those successes. All right. So there you go. Start thinking and recognizing if you have imposter syndrome. And here's your new ways to get over it. All right, everybody, keep winning in business. Make it a great week and rise up and live. I will see you next week with a guest.
Thank you for being a part of the Winning in Business podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to rise up to your next level of success, but are worried about increased stress, time for work and yourself and your family, not to mention being exhausted, I'd like to invite you to a complimentary strategy call where I'll show you how you can do it all. I'll help you reclaim time, keep your sanity, handle the chaos with ease, and move to the next level of success that you deserve and desire. I hope you found value in listening today. Please always leave your comments, feedback, or questions. We check them all. I want you to continue winning in business and reach your next level of success. See you next time.